2004 through 2009 Lexus Gx470 factory trailer hitch install. I'm Brian from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of installing the trailer hitch. This is a factory unit. This is the part number. There is no drilling or modification of the vehicle in any way. This is a direct fit installation. I will link this up in the description of the video. Here is a layout of all the parts that you're going to get. You're going to get all the bolts that come with it, all the brackets for the trailer hitch. So we're going to get started installing the hitch. The first thing you want to do is get the rear of the vehicle off the ground and up in the air as high as you can. I'm using my lift. If you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands. So you're going to want to get started on the passenger side of the vehicle, and we need to drop the exhaust down. There's a rubber hanger here. We're going to pop this rubber hanger off. I'm using muffler hanger pliers to remove this, but you can do this with regular pliers. But this makes it really easy. I will link these up in the description also. So once you get the exhaust down, you're just going to let it hang down. And now on the opposite side, we're going to remove the trailer hitch electrical connector here. So there's two bolts you're going to remove. And once you get the two bolts removed, you're going to reach around behind it. And there's two electrical connectors we need to unplug. So you unplug them. And one of them has a plastic clip that's clipped into the frame. You need to pop that clip out. Now we're going to remove the tow hook bracket here. It's held on with two 17mm bolts. Remove those two bolts. To make quick work of that, I'm using my little impact gun here. It's the Milwaukee mid-torque. Power tools are not required. You can do this all by hand, but it makes jobs like this a lot faster and easier. Now we're going to remove the bracket that held the wiring harness on. To do that, there's two bolts here on the bumper that we need to remove. They're 10mm. And the reason why is there's a bolt coming up vertical. We need to flex the bumper out of the way just a little bit to get to those bolts. So there's a bolt straight up and down here, and then there's one just behind the spare tire right here that we need to get to. To get to that, I used a ratcheting wrench. There's just enough room to get the wrench in there and get the bolt out. Now you can flare the bumper back a little bit and get access to the bolt coming up vertical. These are 12mm bolts. So once you get the two bolts removed from this bracket, we're going to reach up here and pull it out. So you'll just pull it out like this, and after you get it pulled out, then the bracket holding the wiring harness down, it has a couple bolts underneath that we can get to now. And so you're going to remove these two 12mm bolts and then drop the bracket down. Now that that bracket's removed, now we're ready to lift the new trailer hitch back into place. We need to put these brackets that come with it, these little shims that go in between the trailer hitch and the body. So you put these shims on here, then you'll lift into place. But before we do that, I wanted to show you the bolts here. There's four of these bolts that are shorter. They go two on the left and two on the right. Then there's going to be some longer bolts. And these go through these two plates here that sit on top of the hitch here, but we're going to put these plates in later after we get the hitch installed up there. So the shorter 12mm bolts go on the sides, and then there's going to be a couple 10mm bolts that go in the back here. And if you notice, I put red thread locker on all the bolts. This prevents these bolts from vibrating loose and coming back off. I will link this up in the description also. So now I had somebody help me lift it up. I pulled the exhaust down first and put the exhaust side in first, and then started a couple of the bolts by hand, going through the shim up there. And so I started all four of the bolts, and then on the opposite side I had my helper start these bolts on this side with the shim underneath also. So 4 bolts on the left and 4 bolts on the right. Now we can take the two plates and slide them through on top of the hitch here, and then we're going to put the longer bolts through here and thread them into the threaded brackets above. So all the holes that the bolts go through are already threaded from the factory, so there's no drilling or tapping you need it. You'll just lift it up into place and start all the bolts. I recommend you leave them all loose until all the major bolts are started. Then after you get them all started by hand, then you can run them up until they're snug. So I'm using my little impact gun here to just run them up until they're snug. Then we'll go back over all the brackets and bolts with a torque wrench. Off a torque wrench, we're going to torque all the 17mm bolts here. The 4 on the front and then the 4 on the side. So the 2 on each side. We're going to torque all these down in 2 passes. The first pass is going to be set at 60 foot-pounds, and we're going to torque all these bolts down to 60 foot-pounds. Then we'll go back over all the bolts and retorque them at 80 foot-pounds. That'll be the final torque on them. Then the smaller bolts in the back, we'll torque those all down to 25 foot-pounds. Once we get all the brackets and bolts tightened down and torqued, we're going to put the little metal bracket that went underneath the bumper here, slide that back into position, install the 2 original bolts that came with the car back in there and tighten those down. Then the 2 bolts in the front of the cover here that were on the bumper, go ahead and install those 2 10mm bolts. After that, we're going to install the electrical connector back into the new bracket. So you're going to slide the connector into the bracket like this and start the 2 10mm bolts, the small ones that are in the kit, and tighten those down. Then we're going to take the bracket here and slide it up into position. It mounts on the left side here, so you're going to line it up with the hitch, and it bolts onto the hitch. So you're going to bolt those in, and then after that we're going to plug the electrical connectors in. To get to these electrical connectors, I had to pop the other end off the frame here. It wasn't quite long enough. So what you do is you pull it off the frame, and then it comes with the zip tie that's specially designed to stick into the mounting hole where the plastic clips for the wiring harness was. So you'll put that zip tie in there, then you'll flip it around the wiring harness and then zip tie it to the frame of the vehicle. Now that you got the wiring harness secured to the subframe on the side here, now we need to re-secure the exhaust pipe back into the rubber hanger here. I have a hook tool that I hook into the hanger, and I stretch it, and it allows it to go over the port on the exhaust. So once you get the exhaust remounted, passenger side here, I went ahead and took the bolts back off and installed the original tow hook bracket back through and torqued those back down. The two steps, the 60 and the 80 foot-pounds. So if you're interested in a factory tow hitch for your vehicle, I will link it up in the description of the video. I'm Brian Esler from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.